Every time you flip a light switch or boil a kettle, you are drawing electricity from a system that has virtually no storage. Because electricity can't yet be stored easily at scale, the power grid operates in a constant state of live balancing. The exact amount of power being generated across the entire country must match the exact amount being consumed by millions of people, second by second. To measure that balance, grid operators use a specific target, 50 Hertz. Think of the entire national power network as a single, highly sensitive physical scale. When supply and demand are perfectly matched, the grid hums along at exactly 50 Hertz. But if demand suddenly outpaces supply, the system struggles to keep up and the frequency drops. If generation outpaces demand, the frequency rises. If that number drifts even half a hertz in either direction, the resulting instability can cause automated shutdowns, damaging equipment and leading to rolling blackouts. Maintaining this equilibrium is a standard engineering challenge around the world. But in the United Kingdom, operators face a cultural phenomenon that threatens this balance on a daily basis: the TV pickup. When a popular television broadcast cuts to commercial, millions of citizens get up from their sofas and head straight for the kitchen. The danger lies in the device they reach for first. British households rely on high-powered electric kettles, drawing up to 3 kilowatts of active power. Switching on 1 million of these at the exact same moment hits the system like a sledgehammer. Managing this massive physical infrastructure relies on accurately forecasting the daily routines and cultural habits of millions of people. To see exactly what happens when an entire nation is synchronized, we look to July 4, 1990. England was playing West Germany in the semifinal of the FIFA World Cup. Over 25 million people were watching the broadcast live as the game went to a sudden, tension-filled penalty shootout. When the final whistle blew and West Germany won, roughly 1.2 million Britons instantly walked to their kitchens to process the loss over tea. Within minutes, the grid absorbed an immediate demand spike of 2,800 megawatts. To put that in perspective, that single moment required the equivalent output of an entire major thermal power station just to boil water. You cannot safely ramp up a nuclear or coal plant in 3 minutes. To survive surges like this, the National Energy System Operator, or NESO, employs forecasting teams. During major events, control room operators are physically watching the broadcast live. They anticipate the exact second a match ends, or when a commercial break hits, triggering emergency power reserves before kettles even click on. Their primary defense is pumped storage hydro. Inside hollowed-out mountains in places like Scotland and Wales, massive gates open, sending millions of gallons of water plunging down vertical, subterranean tunnels. Within seconds, that water hits massive turbines, injecting hundreds of megawatts of active power into the grid exactly as the demand arrives. The grid absorbs these massive thermodynamic shocks safely, but it only works because human behavior, driven by scheduled television and sports, is mathematically predictable. Predictive modeling relies on historical patterns, but preparing for a massive demand spike that never actually arrives creates its own severe engineering crisis. Take the 2014 finale of the Great British Bake Off. It was a massive cultural event, recently moved to BBC One, and NESO's forecasting team readied the system for a huge post-finale surge. They spun up the reserves, expecting millions to head to the kitchen the second the winner was announced, but the spike never materialized. Immediately following the baking finale, the BBC aired a nature documentary featuring baby pandas. Instead of getting up to make tea, the entire country stayed glued to their screens to watch the pandas frolic. This chart shows the danger of a missing spike. When engineers inject massive active generation into the grid and the matching consumer demand doesn't appear, the excess power has nowhere to go. The 50 Hz frequency begins suddenly accelerating. To prevent system damage, operators have to frantically dump power and disconnect generation assets in real time. A similar forecasting failure happened during the 2015 Rugby World Cup final. Hosted at Twickenham in England, the tournament had already generated highly predictable, steady TV pickups. Forecasters expected a cumulative surge of 12,500 megawatts across the final weekend, but the final match happened to land squarely on Halloween. Because no home nations were playing, families prioritized trick-or-treating and local parties over the broadcast. Instead of a massive demand spike, the grid experienced a sudden 1,500 megawatt drop below the standard seasonal baseline, forcing operators to rapidly adjust to prevent severe overgeneration. When sudden cultural shifts overwrite established national habits, statistical models break down. Predicting the grid is entirely dependent on predicting distractions. Occasional forecasting errors during television broadcasts are manageable. But the grid faces a much more dangerous physical threat when millions of people try to coordinate their electricity use on purpose. During global environmental awareness events, like Live Earth or Planet Aid, organizers have frequently proposed synchronized nationwide power switch-offs. The idea is simple: have millions of citizens turn off their lights at the exact same moment to demonstrate a commitment to carbon reduction. But for grid engineers, a coordinated national switch-off is a nightmare. A sudden, massive drop in demand triggers an abrupt rise in system frequency. To keep the frequency from exceeding safe limits, operators are forced to rapidly disconnect large generation assets. The real catastrophe comes minutes later. When the event ends, millions of people simultaneously turn their appliances back on. The grid is suddenly hit with a massive secondary demand surge, but its active power plants have just been powered down. Getting those plants back online takes time the grid doesn't have, risking a total system collapse. Ironically, surviving these artificial, volatile swings forces operators to fire up rapid start, highly polluting fossil fuel generators, ultimately producing more carbon dioxide than the switch-off saved in the first place. On-demand streaming has eroded the frequency of daily soap opera pickups, but live sports and national events still force millions of people onto the exact same schedule. During the Euro 2020 finals, grid operators still saw instant synchronized pickups exceeding 1.6 gigawatts. But today, the grid must handle these surges with a new compounding vulnerability. In a traditional system, massive steam turbines act as physical stabilizers. These magnets weigh hundreds of tons and spin in perfect sync with the grid's 50 Hertz pulse. Because they have so much physical momentum, or inertia, they naturally resist any sudden change in frequency. Solar panels and wind farms, however, use digital inverters to feed power into the grid. They lack that heavy, spinning connection, meaning they can't provide the same mechanical shock absorption during a surge. This shift toward inverter-based energy makes the entire network significantly more sensitive. Without that physical momentum to slow down frequency swings, the grid reacts much more violently to sudden shifts in demand. This lower inertia grid introduces a severe cyber-physical vulnerability. Security analysts are now preparing for load-altering attacks, or LAAs. Instead of targeting power plants, hackers target the demand side, exploiting vulnerabilities in internet-connected devices, like smart thermostats and public electric vehicle chargers. This map illustrates how an LAA mimics a TV pickup. A malicious actor can hijack thousands of high-wattage smart devices and activate them all at the exact same millisecond. Unlike a World Cup match, this surge is completely unpredicted. It bypasses NESO's television models entirely, slamming a sensitive grid with an instant demand spike that forecasters never saw coming. Modern grid stability has evolved beyond the thermodynamics of the tea break. Engineers now face a new frontier where they must defend physical infrastructure against the chaotic and sometimes malicious unpredictability of human action.